Lord Jesus Christ, Word of God the Father, and God of all creation, who gave authority to your holy apostles to subject demons in your name, and to tread underfoot all the power of the enemy. Holy God, who among your other wonders deigned to command, put demons to flight, mighty God, by whose power Satan cast down, fell like lightning from heaven. I humbly invoke your holy name with fear and trembling, that strengthened by your power, I may attack with confidence the evil spirit who torments this your creature. For you will come to judge the living and the dead, and the world by fire. Amen.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Sacramental salutations, Cognonox. Welcome to Exofathom, the show where I guess we fight demons. I'm your host, and always I'm joined with my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. Nick, how you doing?
Hey, happy Monday. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Oh man, it is Monday, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, man. Doing good.
All right. Good.
Ayla, how you doing?
Not gonna lie, I was feeling really good before this show, and then you started, talking some words, and I just felt really weird all of a sudden. Like my chest is burning, and
Oh, that's just
Is that like
the demons coming out of you. That's all. Don't worry.
is that what that is?
Yeah, so it's just another
Goodness.
Monday for you.
Just coughing up, Beetlejuices and stuff. Totally.
Oh, yep. That's all it is.
Sorry, that was so stupid.
So Ayla tonight is not going to say devil or demons, I guess. So she's replaced it with Beetlejuice. So if you hear random ramblings about Beetlejuice, she's just losing her mind over there. That's all.
No, it's true. Okay, look, I had two friends over for a sleepover one night, and we started talking about some movie that references the Beetlejuice, and they kept saying it. Obviously you can't refer to an antecedent without using its name. It's very tough. And I started counting how many times they said it, and by the time they left, my whole house felt like it needed to be saged, and I was like, don't bring that word into my
Well, now through possessed electronics, it's gonna attack you like so many modern horror movies.
It's true. My blue snowball recording device, the USB cord, is gonna slowly inch around my neck at the night. It's gonna be bad.
Oh, that's like Final Destination. That's not even demonic.
Yeah, I'm keeping this in this room. Closing the door then.
Well, cool. So obviously tonight I do want to talk about possession, mainly demonic possession, because there's actually a few different types of spiritual possession. Even you can make the argument that ideas can possess human beings and force them to behave in manners that are kind of uncharacteristic to themselves. Even in Jungian psychology, we have the idea of anima and animus possession, which are slightly different. But my first question to you, do you have any secondhand experience at possession? Well, if you have firsthand experience, that'd be kind of cool. Have you ever been possessed is the question I'm going to ask.
No, I can't say that I have. That's one I can't cross off the old bucket list there. But no, I don't know secondhand. I mean, secondhand really through movies. I didn't grow up with people in my life that were of that religious persuasion. So perhaps if I had grown up with some people that were into exorcisms and stuff, then maybe I would have heard more. But yeah, just the movie The Exorcist, which was properly frightening as a child.
I've seen them. The first time I saw that movie, I was 12, and I couldn't stop laughing. And it was because I didn't like. Maybe the effects were just too old, but I found it so campy that it. I had heard so much because it was the movie that scared my mom to no end. Like my mom was fine with me watching almost anything for the most part. One of like my first movies in the movie theater as a kid was The Devil's Advocate, right? So there wasn't really a limit on what I could watch, but I was not allowed to watch The Exorcist, so I had to go to a friend's house to see it.
Yeah, I think that movie kind of scared Gen Xers and Boomers a lot, and traumatized them. There's a lot of people that, I guess, because it was so cutting edge. I don't think there was a movie like that before. So like you're seeing something like this for the first time, even if it's fictionalized through a movie, it's still like there's something primal about it. There's something primal about possession that kind of like stirs us to our core.
Oh yeah, like one of those. Yeah, I think it's maybe the loss of control, of complete control, to something destructive. Maybe like full of malice, something that is so unhuman that we can't get it out of us without death, I guess. But like, so like in exorcisms, you have the goal of getting the demon out of the person, right? But if everything goes sideways, then the soul dies and is captured by the demon. So there's also like I guess the stakes of it's not just your life that's going to end. It's going to be, even if you were a good person, you're going to be dragged to hell.
That's not good. It's just not good.
Yeah, without your permission.
Well, that reminds me of like I think it's the movie Constantine. Is that the one with Rachel Weisz and Neo?
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Where John Wick fights
mirrors.
I thought you were gonna be like Constantine, with Rachel Weisz and Tilda Swinton. I'd be like,
you're missing one.
You're missing Keanu Reeves.
Tilda Swinton though did a phenomenal job in that movie. I forgot about that role, but no, I mean, but like that was the case. Was her sister was really devout, and then they claimed that she committed suicide, but Rachel was like, no, she didn't. She never would. But then like, I don't think she saves her sister. Her sister's just like eternally damned. And I'm like, that's really messed up. I don't like
Constantine. That. Constantine gives himself up to save her sister's soul. He makes a deal with the devil.
Oh, that's right. Doesn't he get lifted up at some point and he gives somebody the finger?
Yeah, because by sacrificing himself, he did one final good deed to enter into heaven, and so the devil's trying to drag him to hell, but then God stops him.
I love it. No, I love the rapport between them. It's pretty good. It's a good movie.
Yeah. So I guess you kind of covered the question though, right? About the secondhand experience you and your friends, or do you have any more? Like, has it all just been movies and these sort of like?
Well,
like, have you ever played with the Ouija board or anything like that?
I didn't play with the Ouija board, but definitely saw some. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think I've seen any like craziness like that. I've definitely seen people possessed by ideas and possessed by like some sort of like when people have like a laughing fit, I feel like that's a type of possession because there's like this energetic like undulation of joy or something. But Beetlejuice possession, I have not seen firsthand. And secondhand, yeah, it would just be movies. And I did feel like The Exorcist was pretty freaky. I was older when I watched it though, like 20s, and I think it was like one of those films where it bleeds into like questionable reality, right? Because like if you watch a movie about like zombies or a movie about vampires, there's still a suspension of disbelief because it's so fantastical. But with something like this, where it originates from a prominent religion that has actual books about this stuff hidden away and like it happens in real life, I feel like it blurs the line. And nobody, I don't think to that point really saw anything like that. So, I mean, I could totally see how, especially like back in the day, seeing that movie for the first time would really freak people out. And also, it's one of the movies that has a lot of lore behind it. Like a lot of accidents happened on the set and there's a lot of like weird just like chit chat about it. So I think that again blurs the lines of reality and fiction and makes it even more scary because I think your imagination fills in the gaps and it's the type of movie that can follow you home, so to speak. Like it's that scary. It puts a little tiny seed of concern in your
Well,
mind.
it definitely cursed Linda Hamilton. I mean,
Yeah. Didn't she break her
That's true.
back?
she broke her back, and then they also like they made her like like simulate, you know, masturbation with a crucifix while yelling "fuck me." You know, like it was pretty traumatic for a little girl to go through something like that.
Oh my god! You know you're
Yeah.
100% right. That's
Yeah,
Well, you
Oh
have to
my
get the
God.
shot. I mean,
you got to
what
get
do
the
you-
shot.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
Jesus,
Poor
Mhm.
Linda.
some bad juju on that set.
Yeah, no, that was one
Yeah.
of those cursed productions, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like came years and years afterwards as well.
Yeah, well, and I think too, you know, that's another thing. Like it borders along the lines of taboos. And I think like, you know, we had a whole episode about superstition, I think. You know, and like for Navajos, we're very superstitious about things. There's just certain things you don't do. And it's funny because it's like you don't even ask why you don't do them. You just don't do them. Grandma says you don't do it. And so yeah, like with the crucifix, that is a revered totem. Um you would never. And so the fact that
Mhm.
they did, it was so bad that it had to be motivated by some it's just, yeah, no, it's a cursed film for
Desecrating
sure.
Holy
Mhm.
symbols and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, it's just it's doing all the things that you're not supposed to do, and I could see especially, like, the older generations, that just being so far beyond what's
Mhm.
acceptable, that it
Oh
would
yeah,
be very hard to, like, watch back to back to back scenes with that kinda stuff.
just shake you down to your core, sort of thing.
A little
So,
bit, a little
well,
bit.
talking about those blurring of lines, that prayer I read actually comes from a translated book that is used during the rites of exorcism. It's called Exorcisms and Certain Supplications,
What's
and
supplication mean?
it's like you could think of them as blessings that, you know, in like Abrahamic religions are kind of good to hold on to. They're
Mm.
in for example, in Islam, there are ones that you can feel quite prideful in knowing word for word.
Okay.
And same thing in Catholicism. There's certain prayers that we would have that, you know, that you should know word for word. You can feel good about knowing them, and if you don't, then you're kind of a bad Catholic. But these,
enough.
yeah, these are the ones that are meant for, you know, exercise, you know, or meant for the rite of exorcism. And that particular prayer is one that the exorcist says to himself before walking into the room. So he has to dispose himself, remove himself from it, and get his mind set ready for a fight with a demon or, you know, the devil. But again, starting to like blur those lines a little bit. And obviously, if this is happening, then it becomes reality, right? So even if demonic possession isn't a thing, which according to an Atlantic article that I have looking at, about 50% of Americans believe demonic possession is real. All right.
I'm saying, man. I
And
just
the percentage of people who believe that the devil is real is even higher. It went up from 55% of people in 1990 to 70% in 2007, according to a Gallup poll.
And that's just 2007. I bet it's much higher now.
Yeah, right. And I was trying to grab some numbers on like exorcism requests, and the most recent number I could grab was from 2018, and it was 1,700 people. By the time, when was this published? In August of 2018? No, December 2018. I'm sorry. So by that time, there was 1,700 requests to have some sort of major exorcism.
And I saw an article. I don't know that they published the numbers, but it was in 2020. And I remember this because I was like, oh, this would make a great episode. But I was too afraid to do the episode. So, Mike, thank you so much for doing it. It said that exorcisms were on the rise in the US, and that was 2020. And I thought that was really interesting. Because, yeah, if they were already that high in 2018 and it's on the rise,
There,
interesting.
we will get into it because there's actually two types of exorcisms. You have minor exorcisms and major exorcisms.
Ah,
The
shit.
minor, if you've been baptized, like I've been baptized Catholic, I've gone through a minor exorcism. It's a blessing that they give to you before your baptism or before you're converted, and can be used by a lot of priests. By more, like the major exorcisms are only by bishops and high ups. The minor ones can be done and kind of get rid of influences. So like, I don't know, you could think of like a house cleansing ritual with sage as sort of your minor exorcism. And then, maybe your once a year ritual is your major exorcism. So I wonder if that number is using both of those minor and major exorcisms or just major exorcisms. Because it actually takes a lot of work to convince the diocese to try to do an exorcism. They usually want you to go through doctors, psychologists, anything to rule out anything other than demonic possession.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, it does. I'm not sure if it's minor or major, but it also could be one of those things where the person writing didn't even address that nuance and just lumped them together. But I think maybe they were also referring to the rise in requests for exorcisms. So yeah, maybe there's just a rise in requests, and yeah, it just came down to pesticides in that area or something like that.
Some fungus growing on some mushroom somewhere, or some fungus growing on some food somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there has been a significant amount of rain in certain parts of the country that don't typically get that much rain, like Phoenix. So I would
Not
venture
here.
to say, I know, not here, but like in Phoenix, the residents and homeowners aren't used to that amount of rain. So I would guarantee that like there'll be a rise in mold situations, and they'll need remediation specialists to start getting on that. And you'll probably see tangential exorcisms rising in Phoenix because people have black mold or something, anyway.
Yeah, start to cause hallucinations and things.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in a little. Let's try to define some stuff, right? Because that's sort of, I guess, the first thing we should do. And I'm going to try to keep it focused in on Roman Catholic exorcisms of demonic possessions, because there's been a wide array of the idea of spiritual possession since like the Mesopotamians. Some of their like ancient priests would make wax figures of demons to try to, throw them into fire to try to cast them out. I believe the Hindus had an ancient form of ritual to also cast out demons. I mean, you can, find this in the Abrahamic religions as well. So, but I want to keep it focused at least on the thing that I was baptized into, because the reasons, because I want to. Does that work?
Reasons. Yeah.
Because reasons. So there's sort of four characteristics that really point out like a demonic possession, and this has been true since like the Middle Ages. First off, you would have a manifestation of superhuman strength. Secondly, you would have speaking in tongues or languages that the victim cannot know. So in like every movie, this always ends up being Latin or maybe some Sumerian language if the writer's feeling really clever. The third would be like revelation of knowledge, distant or hidden, that the victim cannot know. And then lastly, or I guess you can like going back to the exorcism that it could be a lie, right? Demons do lie, but the famous "your mother sucks cocks in hell" line. Get a revelation of some sort of knowledge. Blasphemous rage, obscene hand gestures, using profanity, and aversion to holy symbols. So maybe the last thing I said is actually just number 4. Holy symbols and names, relics, or places. the simulated masturbation thing would definitely adhere to that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
But it's sort of this like extreme violent behavior that's totally uncharacteristic. And I don't know if just straight like black mold or the unknowing use of some hallucinogenic would make somebody do that, right?
Yeah.
There has to, if we try
You'd
to
have to take
rationalize.
a very large quantity of hallucinogens to start raging out and having superhuman strength and stuff.
It's true.
Or
I don't
maybe
think.
go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna add. I don't think mold gives you superhuman strength. So yeah, it probably weakens you more than anything.
What about adrenaline? You know, what if you're getting all this attention from people that you've never gotten attention from, and you know you're already obviously psychologically damaged, but now you know there's someone saying that there's a demon in you, we have to get it out, and all of that craziness, that chaos is bringing adrenaline out of you and giving you superhuman strength.
Yeah, I would wonder if there's that's a pretty good question. I mean, maybe some sort of like adrenal malady, that some sort of disease that affected your adrenal glands and caused like a dump in adrenaline. Yeah, I could see where that would make somebody seem like they're possessed by something, for sure.
And then like going back to like the Salem times or Puritan, like real Puritan times, the possessions that were recorded there was often women, right? And women had no place in that society. They didn't have a say. They were subservient, you know, they were forced to just go along with whatever. But now you can create this feedback loop of, you know, one rejecting the symbols that have oppressed you and using those adrenaline dumps to make it look like, one, you have that superhuman strength, and two, you're saying profane things. And now you have elevated yourself in status. You're not just some random girl. You're the possessed person in town that everybody needs to now listen to and turn their attention towards.
Yeah. Well, and also too, how often are, back in the day, how often were women displaying strength at all, right? If you just assume a woman's weak and you don't, you've never like had a push-up contest with her, but then she's carrying like, babies and buckets of water and I don't know, whatever, pounding flour or whatever, she could be quite strong. And so like, if she decides to pop off, that could be, quote, superhuman strength, end quote. And then, like you said, if it was a reaction to things, it could be interpreted as this. And then you have a circle of men around her trying to exercise her. And she's just like, no, you guys are
Or
assholes.
Throwing dew windows and shit.
yeah. Well, or you could see, I mean, like
Possible.
if the ergot sort of theory is true, I wonder how much it resembles the berserkers, right? The Norse Vikings that used to eat large amount of hallucinogenic mushrooms and then go into battle. They were said to have superhuman strength as well, and be able to do things that no other men could do. So I wonder if the ergot hypothesis, which is that during the Salem times there was some sort of blight on the grain that created a basically like a proto LSD called ergot that got a whole bunch of people high and made them think that women were turning into cats and toads and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering if that ergot exposure could have also added to the like enhanced strength thing too.
You could also do, and if go for it, Ayla.
Well, I was just going to say, it's an interesting thing because, I've never taken LSD, but I've seen, like movies from the 60s and 70s and stuff. And there's a representation of what LSD trips are like. So it's just funny that if it were LSD for these Salem people, that it would manifest as like cats and toads. Because you don't see anything about like a bunch of demonic cats and toads in like 70s LSD flicks or anything like that. So,
But there's too, like, think about the society. Like
well,
back
that's
then,
what
it
I
was
mean.
far more religious.
But that's what I mean is like the the personal experience gets tethered into the representation of what comes out. So it could be interesting too how like possession could affect a believer versus a non-believer. You know, like you don't really see a lot of atheists getting possessed. And if you did, that would be quite interesting. And I wonder if it would be the same experience as somebody who has primed knowledge of like, you know, Aramaic and I don't know, like specific Beetlejuices and
Languages they
such.
shouldn't know. Yeah,
Right.
or demons they shouldn't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you. And it, so one of the big things too is like, what is it? An increase in susceptibility to influence. So imagine, you know, you're on Ergot and you're feeling this, you know, I guess superhuman type strength, and somebody calls you, you know, this tells you that you're possessed, and then you start believing that you are possessed, thus influencing your actions, and also, um, you know, reinforcing the idea that a demon does have hold of you, and that you at this time need it to be exercised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which would be the natural sort of diagnosis from a, you know, very religious community. Somebody acting out very oddly, especially if it would be out of character, which, you know, I'm sure you're just a normal human being until you eat like, you know, 10 grams of ergot or whatever. And so, yeah, I could imagine that in a very religious community, the first diagnosis would be demonic possession, because that just seems the most naturally fitting.
That makes sense. There's also a few other forms of demonic activity that, at least in Catholicism, deems worthy of a major exorcism, and they range. So we've talked a lot about possession, right? And that's in which Satan or demons take full possession of a person's body without their consent. Possession usually comes as a result of a person's actions that lead to increased susceptibility to Satan's influence or Urgok's influence, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
The other one is obsession, which includes sudden attacks of irrationally obsessive thoughts, usually culminating in suicidal ideation, and which typically influences dreams. So, have you ever had a dream of a demon for months on end, maybe years on end? Then that might be something that would require, you know, an exorcist to come in, or a psychologist to try to figure out why you're dreaming those things. Third one is oppression, in which there's no loss of consciousness or voluntary action, such as in there's no loss in consciousness or involuntary action, such as in the book of Job, in which Job was tormented by Satan through a series of misfortunes in business, material possessions, family, and health. Now, I feel like that can get a little vague, because what if you just have really bad luck in life?
Yeah, talk to Job about that, man. That is fucking brutal. You know the story of Job?
No, just sounds
So
bad.
basically, it's so fucked up. It's so basically God and the devil meet at some point, and they're having like this bragging contest about how, you know, God is saying to the devil, like, I can make anybody recognize me and worship me and be grateful to me no matter what. And he shows, you know, I guess he shows the devil him, like, you know, helping somebody or something like that, and the devil goes, yeah, okay, but that's all well and good, but why don't you take away the good things that you've given some of these people and see if they still thank you? And so the whole premise of Job's story is that they pick Job because he's a pious, loving, like God-fearing man. And the devil's like, hey, so maybe take away all of his things, all the things that make him comfortable and happy, and see if he still praises you. And so they kill his family. They send like pestilence to his crops. They give him like boils, and so Job has to go through all of these like terrible things, and not once does Job denounce God, basically proving the devil wrong. So Job goes through all of these things that are terrible, and Job still thanks God in the end. And basically the whole premise of it is just the God and devil had a sort of like a pissing contest and decided to torture this guy. And then at the end, Job gets a new family. But then I always thought to myself, I'm like, why would you give him a new family like that? Just like, well, we killed your old family, but here's a new one for you.
Like some like stoic stuff right there. It's like, oh, your old family died. Here you go. Just take this new one. It'll be the same. Don't worry.
Yeah. There's a reward for going through hell.
Wow.
But yeah.
That is messed up. That's messed up. Poor guy.
Mm-hmm.
That story gets dark. And it, if you want to see like a modern allegory, have you ever seen Cape Fear?
No, it's on my list.
So Robert De Niro's character gets out of jail. He was sent there for doing some horrible stuff, but the lawyer who was supposed to represent him didn't include some information that would have made him have maybe less time. And while in jail because of his crimes, some horrible stuff happens to him. But he finds himself getting real religious and starts to kind of pick apart the Bible and pick apart different philosophies. Becomes a real educated man, if not, perversely educated. He gets out and he finds the lawyer, and he brings up the book of Job and tells this lawyer he should read it because he acts like, I guess, Satan and God in this sense, and then ventures out to ruin this guy's life. But it's a good movie. It gets real dark.
Isn't that the premise behind Sideshow Bob?
With Bart?
Mm-hmm. Because Bart sends him to prison, and he gets out of prison, and he's like obsessed with the idea of revenge, and he mentions terrible stuff. Is
he as religious though? Because Robert De Niro's character is very religious.
I don't know if they brought that into it, but I know that there was like a scene that's straight out of Cape Fear. Yeah, but anyway, neither here nor there.
No, I can see that sort of what's the word I want to use? I can see that coming up again. Yes, thank you. I can see that illusion being
Did you just say illusion and Job in the same sentence?
Illusion
That's
Job?
Amazing. No, it's just that's an Arrested Development reference for any of the listeners out there.
Oh,
that show.
Illusions, Michael.
Fair enough.
I haven't seen it. That show is way too dry for me.
It's super dry. It's one of those where like Nick will make me watch it, and I'm just like, and then like on certain days, if I give up all resistance, it's pretty funny. Not gonna lie.
Jesus, so you like being tied down to a chair over there?
He loves that show.
Okay, so moving on. So there's external physical pain caused by Satan or demons. So you see this in horror movies a lot when possession comes out, where like, there's just random scratch marks or things like that happening on the person's skin from, an undefined place.
Stigmata.
I thought stigmata was a bit more holy though, like the marks of Jesus in your hand, right? Like it's seen as a good thing, but not like a demonic thing.
Well, that's thankful. I've got that going on my hands because of all the crutching. I've got like these 2 dark holes forming my palm. Yeah, look at that.
You're a holy woman.
Yes. Pay me $25. I'll tell you your future. I'll say it right. It'll be great.
Well, just keep it vague. As long as you keep it vague, you can tell anybody's future.
There it is.
There's infestation, which affects houses, objects, things, or animals. So I guess like that pestilence on the obviously the pestilence on the crops in the story of Job. And then lastly, subjugation, in which a person voluntarily submits to Satan or demons. Now, recently there's there's been this crazy story coming out of Russia of this couple who were Satanists and they were going around and killing and eating people.
Mm,
Isn't that
Gross.
that's love right
We're-
there.
Wow.
true romance?
Ride or die.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, but that would be an example where you're willingly giving up your soul to Satan, and
Mhm.
whether or not they've lost consciousness during their deeds, I don't know. I think I didn't read the stories. It was one of those things I was reading the headlines. It's like, oh, there's more crazy people on this planet. I just kept scrolling. But it would be interesting to see if they feel like it was completely voluntary, like they ate people on their own, or they had a voice telling them in their head,
Mhm.
to eat people. Because that gets pretty extreme.
What if they're just right next to like a military base and they're just using those LRADs on them? It's like, go
God.
kill a family and eat them.
Oh.
I wouldn't be too shocked, especially with the Russians.
Yeah, why not?
They do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Just see what happens.
Nope. Let's see. There's also going back, I guess, to obsession. There's a story in the Old Testament that we talked about, with David and Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
But King Saul was tormented by a quote unquote evil spirit, right? And the only thing that would soothe him was David's lyre, his ability to play that instrument. And so I wonder too if I believe that might end up being a form of like a minor exorcism, because you're kind of releasing some of the influences involved, like, that are stressing you out. But it's weird to think that if you really wanted to take it to an extreme, you can say you're working through your day and you get an onslaught of emails that are just stressing you out by the end of the day, and you can't really sleep. All you're thinking about is work. It's taking up everything. It's weird to think that might be considered some form of possession.
Yeah. Have you ever been so mad you wanted to destroy the world? I mean, come on. I get that
That's true.
almost all the time. I mean, I don't, thankfully, and I'm glad I'm not like a mad scientist or anything. But no, I can definitely see how that the amalgamating of those stressors, or that indulging in that rage or anger, can definitely compound. And yeah, for sure. That's why you got to take a breath whenever you're frustrated. Just like take a few seconds to be like, okay, recenter. But yeah, I can see where all of that can compound, and people probably snap.
Oh yeah, of course. Like going postal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wonder if we had a more religious society, if that would end up always being like, oh, the devil got another one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely would see that. Yeah, I think that there's a pretty good metaphorical argument for the concept of possession, and just the lowest levels of the human capabilities. Like the most depraved things that we're willing to do. Because it wasn't that long ago that we were doing very depraved things to each other for thousands of years, and I think there's still that in us. And so, metaphorically, the possession seems to be like a romanticization, almost an externalization of the evil that lurks within us.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, because we can kind of move into like dissociative disorders too from that point of view, right? Because now you're dissociating from yourself. You don't have any responsibility if you're possessed.
Right.
And you're returning back to those baser things that in a higher self society you wouldn't necessarily admit to, or that you would even think about doing on your normal life, because it's just so crazy and depraved, right? Like eating people or something like that.
Right.
That can't be you. That has to be some demon. That has to be the devil at work.
Right. And I think a lot of people tend to use that as the absolution from the evil thought itself, and maybe not understanding that it's okay to have evil thoughts. It's you don't act on them because they're not you. You know, it's that possession. You're being possessed by an evil thought. And, you know, like as long as you don't act out that evil, then you're not an evil person, you know?
Yeah, it's so
I mean,
thinking about
that's
something.
oversimplification, but yeah.
I mean, thinking about something and then doing it, obviously two different things. But there's also needs to be some sort of uh, like the notion of evil, I think, changes throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to also be some sort of defining factor, and maybe possession is the just the whole idea is like, no, those evil thoughts are me. I can actually get really fucking depraved if I really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I say the devil is it, then I don't really have to confront it, and then I can use these
Right.
tools of religion to negate it,
Mm-hmm.
which serves the same purpose, right? Where if you accept it, like, no, these evil thoughts are me, no matter what they may be in that time period.
Right.
I don't want to do these things because I don't think it's becoming of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there was probably a good utility in externalizing it and putting a different face on the evils that we as humans have kind of innate within us. And it probably helped us become better community members as well, to externalize the evil so that we all had something to rally against instead of picking each other apart. You know, because if we all internalized it all and accepted the fact that we're the ones creating these atrocities, then you would have every excuse to go to war with your neighbor. But
Yeah.
if you externalize it to some bogeyman, or Beetlejuice, then then you can all rally together against it, and that creates community bonding.
Yeah. Social cohesion and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think of like it's hard to do that though in like the modern world, in like contained places that, where people go crazy in offices, right? They go postal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start to externalize like like that Karen or whatever, or like that person that annoys you in the
Right.
office, that
Right.
drives you nuts? What happens now is that we end up finding coworkers that agree that that person's anal retentive or is just mean all the time or whatever, and then they have their own group of friends, and we end up going to war each other through some weird office shenanigans things, and not the
Yeah.
fun kind, right? Not like we all get Nerf guns and shoot at each other.
Right.
It's like, how can I make sure this person doesn't get promoted? How can I get this person fired? Okay,
Right.
so just in the modern world, how maybe like being like, oh, she's just being possessed for the last year by these ideas or something.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's a valid question, because I'm not really sure outside of religion how you externalize evil in that respect without otherizing somebody. Because the thing about religion is that you can externalize the evil, even if another person is enacting the evil, you can say that it wasn't them, that they are still redeemable. And I think that that's so vital for outlooks on humanity, is that we still have a redemption. We still have the ability to be absolved from the things that we've done. And so, yeah, I don't know how in a secular world we can externalize evil in a way that coalesces people. And I think more and more we're realizing that what we're doing is just pointing the finger at each other for the things that we're thinking.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's
Right.
what I think one of the the good things about Christianity is that there's that turn the other cheek sort of thing. There's just sort of like those things end up becoming important because you end up being right in like most people in their work setting, that's not really who they are as a human being. And it becomes there's so little stress on you when you're just like, oh, that person's just being that person. That's silly. You can laugh it off. Like that person's just being possessed by some random evil of that day. They're just having a bad day. And they have to externalize it on the people around them because maybe it's the way
whatever
that
happened to somebody's got a case of the Mondays. I think that
Yeah.
let me bring that back. It's just, next time your coworker's trying to go postal, just stop them and say, "Hey, somebody's got a case of the Mondays." Maybe they'll reconsider.
No, you go full ham. You get a priest in there. You tie him down to the desk. You start performing some exorcism rites, and you get that demon out.
It's funny though because like you know, you talked about one of the markers being suddenly speaking like a different language that you don't know or whatever. And I would almost argue that busting out with someone's got a case of the Mondays. Like nobody talks like that. And so when you do, couldn't that be a form of possession and you're just like manifesting some chaos, right? Because like,
Well,
you
what's the
know,
quote? It's like,
Could be.
people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess we could think about any sort of thought or aphorism or interaction as a form of possession.
Well, like you can, yeah, you know, but you can think of it. So, like in software engineering field, there's a little. It can be a little shady. I'll just say that. I run into it too with like maybe real estate agents as well. But I can use certain jargon to like either confuse somebody because they're just not technical. You know, they work in a different department, and they're just like, "Dude, you're speaking another language, right?"
Mhm.
And especially if I have this idea running through my brain where, you know, something needs to get done, or I see a way to build something, I'll start speaking in a language that I need another programmer in a room, not somebody like a project manager would be in. Hence,
Yeah.
like you said, possessed by an idea.
Yeah.
And there's
Plus,
a,
oh, yeah. No,
It
I was
just
just going to
takes-
say, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, do you go for it? Because
No, I was just going to say there was it was also a long time ago. So I'm sure that when somebody's just going blah, 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 some dummy was like, "Oh, why is he speaking Portuguese all of a sudden?" Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
never heard of it before, but it sounds like some foreign language. You know,
that
like,
make that in this little tiny town. They're like, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that person's speaking in tongues. I'm pretty sure that's like demonic.
yeah, exactly.
They're having some sort of spasm or something like that where they can't control it. There's some sort of like Tourette syndrome, right, or something.
Mm-hmm. And they'd be like, "What are you doing? Speaking that French, huh?" This person's just chattering and like speaking nothing.
So, in I guess we can move on a little bit. We've kind of talked about like from the mundane ideas of possession to the actual like demonic possession. But I came across this interesting thing that in psychology there's this term known as possessive trance disorder, which have been sometimes conflated with possessions, and the symptoms that are associated with physical or mental illness, such as hysteria. Hysteria is a weird one. I don't like that word at all, because like back in the day, you could send somebody to a sanitarium asylum over female hysteria,
Mm-hmm.
which is the most ridiculous
They gave them
thing.
orgasms and they were better.
Yeah, right.
So
Terrible.
ridiculous.
So like whenever I see that term, like if anybody ever has a thing of like hysteria, it's like, I'm starting to look at, you sure you're not just being another priest just in a different school of religion? Anyways, so hysteria, Tourette syndrome, epilepsy, schizophrenia, conversion disorder, or DID, dissociative identity disorder, which used to be multiple personality disorder. And that's what I've also thought was interesting. Like maybe the manifestation of these demonic entities end up being just other personalities with completely different neurochemical triggers. Because something has to happen for you to have that sort of superhuman strength, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah, if it's possible that alters or DID could be an explanation, but I would be kind of reticent from saying definitively, just because DID requires an amount of trauma during childhood that is severe, and often. Well, I don't want to get too deep into that, but yeah, very severe and terrible things that children should never have to endure. And that's usually what what sparks that fragmentation of the psyche. But I don't know how often that naturally happens.
Sure. But how often does, demonic possession happen?
Very fair. I don't know.
I mean, we exercise anyone that gets baptized, right? Or even if you convert from some religion over Catholicism, you still go through a minor exorcism while you're undertaking the conversion process.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? Maybe if we didn't go through those minor exorcisms, there'd be so many people going through this.
Would be all over you. Yeah. That's why you take the Eucharist every week, right? So that way you keep the devil away.
That is the ritual of the Last Supper. So the consecration of bread and wine, and then eating it. So that's when you drink the blood of Christ and
eat the flesh.
Yeah, the flesh of Christ. Usually the wine's not that good, anyways.
No, it's just turnt grape juice. It's like a month-old grape juice.
Oh God.
And then there's also some. So I think DID is definitely one of them, because if you're in a small town and you don't have any. I mean, now in the modern world, I'm sure that's one of the combatant, like the psychologists and the priests are arguing what it could be, right? And if the priest is like, no, it's demonic possession, I can see a psychologist going to know this is obviously DID. But if you go back a few hundred years or thousands of years, thinking that, this fragmentation occurs naturally in human beings whenever they are faced with extreme traumatic situations, then that's always been there, right? But the only way we could explain it was through religion. And so we had this idea of demons possessing people coming around.
Right.
Maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in, even in like pagan religions, you have this kind of concept of possession almost, or things being possessed by gods for sure. So yeah, I mean, it goes back a long time.
Yeah, it's one of those ancient.
I wouldn't be surprised, if it was like during, because you got the concept of trepanning, right? Which is trepanning dates back to like 400,000 years ago, and we used to do cranial surgery on each other by tapping the skull with a sharp object and creating a hole to get the demons out.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's called trepanning, and there's evidence that people like lived. So like there's their skull would be healed over where they punctured the skull. So we were doing that hundreds of thousands of years ago. And so I gotta think that for as long as we've been knowing about existence and consciousness, we've probably been having an existential crisis with consciousness. Because you got to think, like, if you get a thought as like a cave person about jumping off or flying, flinging yourself off the cliff, right? Say you get a call from the void. How do you reconcile that? Like, why would you be? What would you do with very limited, cognition and culture to explain the phenomenon? How would you respond to that? You would have to think that there's something wrong with you.
If the gods were cursing you or something like that.
Right. Or even speaking to you. Yeah.
And think about some of like the physical problems you have when the brain swells, right? In which cases they will cut open a part of your skull, right? To relieve some of the swelling. So I wonder if that too, again, with limited medical knowledge, that gets tied in with religion, and they just find that like opening up the skull a bit actually relieves some of the swelling.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, honestly, it's anybody's guess, but I think that we've definitely seen our consciousness as a malady before, and perhaps something that required strict adherence to an orthodoxy in order to keep the demons at bay,
or try to exorcise them out of the body.
Right.
Cool. So do you want to get into some exorcisms itself? I actually have a bit to read for this. Because what I want to do is just kind of talk about in general. We've gone over the two minor and majors, or the two types of exorcism, sorry. Is there anything? I mean, we could go into that a little bit, but I think that seems pretty clear. I kind of wanted to go over who can receive major exorcisms, and then we could talk about the overview and the accommodation of the ritual itself. And from that, I'll be reading from that book once more.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool. So just to refresh people, or if you're just tuning in, when you exorcise somebody, there's two types. There's a minor exorcism, which are prayers used to break the influence of evil and sin in a person's life, whether it's a person being baptized through converting, or again being baptized as a kid, but it's so to overcome the influence of evil and sin in life. And then there's another one known as major exorcism that you see in movies and things like that. And it's employed when there's a case of genuine demonic possession. And we've kind of gone over bits of what demonic possession means earlier, but it's namely when it's determined that the presence of the devil is in the body of the possessed, and the devil is able to exercise dominion over that body. So it has full control over it. People end up contorting and hurting themselves, throwing dudes through windows, all that fun stuff. So who can receive the actual rite of major exorcisms? It actually goes down by rank. There's the Catholics, the converts, non-Catholic Christians who request it, and non-Christian believers, provided they have the proper disposition, meaning that they are sincere in their desire to be free of demonic influence. In cases involving a non-Catholic, the matter should be brought to the attention of the Dionysian or diocesan bishop. Dionysian is a different thing. It's a
Diocese? Is it diocese?
Diocesan. It's a Diocesan, but originating from the archdiocese. Yeah. So you have to bring it up to a bishop if, like, say, we thought, Nick, you're not Catholic, right?
Correct.
So if I feel like
no.
you were possessed, are you sure you're not Catholic?
I'm pretty sure.
But
I
let's say I
lots
thought
of different
you were...
churches as a kid, so I don't know. Maybe
Or are you just trying to get all the bases covered?
Yeah, pretty much.
I could get you, exercised, but I guess you had to believe that the devil was in you, or
And
maybe
that
I could convince. Yeah, or maybe got Ayla to say that you had the devil in you and wanted to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think you have to. There has to be a certain level of belief going on. Like, if you don't believe in any of it, you got some priest coming to your house, and you're like, you ask your life, like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, extra. I'm sure that's one of the checks they do. So this ritual ends up being very particular, because it's the matter of the soul and trying to combat the devil. Like, if you mess up this ritual, like later in the show, maybe we'll get to it tonight, maybe we won't. There's three sort of cases, and in one of them, it seems like they didn't have the right intent when they began the ritual, which ended up very badly for the person who was possessed or believed to be possessed. And so, yeah, you're right. Like, that disposition of even the person themselves is very important. But yeah, no. So we'll start off. This comes from like chapter 4 of that exorcism book, in particular sacraments. In the rite of exorcism, apart from the formulas themselves, special attention should be paid to those gestures and rites that have a primary place and a meaning derived from their use during the time of purification in the converting to Catholicism journey. Such are the sign of the cross, the imposition of hands, the breathing, and the sprinkling of holy water. So even all of those become highly important throughout the ritual itself. The rite begins with the sprinkling of holy water, by which, as a memorial of purification received in baptism, the troubled person is defended against the snares of the enemy. The water may be blessed before the rite, or within the rite itself, before the sprinkling, and, if appropriate, with commingling of salt. And the use of salt ends up being like spiritual thing to combat demons, and much more than just Catholicism, I believe.
Mhm. Salt circle.
Yes. Then follows the prayer of the litany, by which the mercy of God is invoked upon the troubled person through the intercession of all the saints. After the litany, the exorcist may recite one or several of the psalms that implore the protection of the Most High and extol the victory of Christ over the evil one. The psalms are said either as a single unit or in a responsorial manner. When the psalm is completed, the exorcist himself may add a psalm prayer. Then the gospel is proclaimed as a sign of the presence of Christ, who through his own word in the proclamation of the church brings healing to human infirmities. Afterward, the exorcist imposes his hands upon the troubled person, by which right the power of the Holy Spirit is invoked, so that the devil will depart from the one who, through baptism, was made the temple of God. At the same time, he may also breathe upon the face of the troubled person. Then the Apostles' Creed is recited, or the baptismal promise of faith is renewed with renunciation of Satan. The Lord's Prayer follows, by which our God and Father is implored to set us free from the evil one. When these things have been completed, the exorcist shows the troubled person the Lord's cross, which is the source of every blessing and grace, and the sign of the cross is made over the person, by which Christ's power over the devil is shown. Finally, he says a deprecative formula by which God is petitioned, as well as an imperative formula, by which the devil, in the name of Christ, is directly adjourned to withdraw from the troubled person. The imperative formula is not to be used unless preceded by the deprecative formula. But the deprecative formula may also be used without the imperative one. All that has been mentioned above, to the extent necessary, may be repeated, either in the same celebration, with attention to what is noted below in number 34, which we'll get to, or at another time until the troubled person is completely set free. The rite is concluded with a canonic of thanksgiving, a prayer, and a blessing. So any thoughts about that any thoughts or questions about that ritual? Because it's a pretty involved ritual.
Yeah, it seems pretty laborious and something that can be repeated ad nauseum or ad infinitum, technically. It is interesting. And it's interesting the concept of banishment and incantation and stuff like that, because it makes me think of you have the inverse of all of this, which is the, sort of new agey, like trying to channel spirits, maybe even getting into that fifth dimensional space where we're contacting other dimensional beings. This seems much more on the banishing side of that. But it still takes roots with, I can still see the through line with this sort of repeated audio utterance. It's always about a mantra or a repetition of words, speaking words in a certain cadence at a certain interval multiple times. For some reason, either elicits or banishes demons or other dimensional creatures. So I think that's pretty interesting.
There you go. And I think you kind of hit it on the head, like those all like the common threads, even through other religions, is this repeat of holy words, right? Not just any words, or maybe you could try any words on your own time, but holy words, words that are important to the ritual itself. And just to clarify, because I didn't know this when I first read this, but deprecative formulas are exorcistic prayers addressed to God, which request the liberation of the afflicted person. The imperative formulas are addressed directly to the inhabiting demonic spirit, commanding it to depart in the name of Jesus Christ. And what I found interesting with at least this ritual is that you are not the one who is telling the demon to get out. You're coming on behalf of God or of Jesus. You yourself don't have the power. But
Right.
in in meditation and other rituals, it's you who are invoking things. It's you who are trying to get up to that level versus just being a instrument to channel
Hmm.
that sort of energy, I guess.
Being a vessel. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's the I think that that's delineation between white and black magics, where it's like I consider what I would consider a quote unquote black magic. It would be one that is about um, lifting yourself up to the level of God, where I would see white magic more as being a conduit for the divine energy of God. Um, I know that I think Reiki has that principle as well, right, Ayla? It's like you're not the one healing. You're being the vessel for the healing energy.
Yeah, sort of. It's the person themselves is doing the healing. But you're facilitating like a purple light of
Hmm.
Reiki energy. Like you're just saying like put energy here and that helps facilitate movement and all that good stuff. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, and I think too, like sort of how do I explain this? I guess in modern rituals like therapy, right? Because I consider that a ritual. uh the therapists themselves might, they're not the one really fixing the person, right? The person is sort of fixing themselves. They're sort
Hmm.
of being guided down a road to see certain traumas or to be able to communicate about whatever. I think it's a very similar role with the exorcist, right? You're not the one who's doing, again, you're not the one doing it. It's more that white magic sort of mentality of just being a vessel, whereas the
Hmm.
Reiki healer does.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, and sort of this notion, no, so like in Aztec rituals, the priest or the person ends up becoming the god. They end up becoming that thing that they're embodying, right? I
Mm.
guess it's closer to the possession aspect than the exorcist aspect. But is there any like native rituals that get close to kind of exorcism? Is it like a
Um,
cleansing?
sort maybe I'm trying to think because like the words might be a little bit different, but would it be fundamentally like the same idea? I know that let's say if you go to war, like so in when you had the Navajo code talkers and they all came back, there's a ceremony. It's like I want to say it's the enemy way, but basically what happens is that the medicine man kind of just cuts ties from anything that might have followed you back. So like if you got PTSD or if you feel like you're haunted by the spirits of people you slayed, there's a ceremony to like cut those tethers off of you.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's interesting because like I'm just trying to think of the idea of like possession in that area. It's I mean, there's a recognition that you can have influences that might not be benevolent or of your own source, and there's a way to like banish that. So it could be kind of similar. I could see that.
Okay, because I was really intrigued because there has to be, it's not just a Catholic thing, right? Like we talked about real early, even like the ancient Mesopotamians had some sort of ritual for this, but
Mm.
or for banishing demons or just banishing spirits that can possess you. But
Oh, no, you're right. You rung a bell. Okay, so there's another ceremony. And I if anybody who's Navajo is listening to this, I'm probably butchering the words, but there's one where like they take the patient and they stay up all night or over a couple days, and the ashes from the fire that they prayed over, what they'll do is they'll take the patient and they'll cover them in the ash. So it's like they hide them, they shield them from whatever was attacking them. And then I think you have to stay covered in that for like 4 days. And then you wash and you're like cleansed basically. So that's one that comes to mind.
it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's more involved than that. And what's really interesting is like if you have that particular ceremony, um if I remember right, there's like several things that happen, and one of them is that you carry a honage, which is like the stick that they use to tend to the fire. You on horseback, you take that from one location to a totally different location. Like you can't finish the ceremony in the same place it started. And like what's even cooler is all your relatives will ride on horseback behind the person that carries that staff. It's a really cool ceremony. I think it's in Nadat. But I mean, again, I'd have to look it up. But yeah, but there's some awesome ceremonies out there for sure. And they have those rituals where like there's very specific things that you do and an order and like a separation and a carefulness about not letting things stick to the person afterwards.
And
Yeah,
tonality and language is very important too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely in Catholic exorcisms as well. Like there's that whole you can go through that whole process of those bullets or those paragraphs that I read for weeks. Well, probably
Yeah.
weeks, because anything more the person's gonna die. I'm about to get to like the circumstances and accommodations of the ritual, like how the setting is set and how the exorcist should approach this thing, or what do they call it? A troubled spirit, a troubled soul. If you mess any of it up, you end up losing the soul,
Mhm.
or have to do the exorcism all over. And there's also the idea that like, exorcists themselves, they offer up part of their soul during the ritual, so they lose it. They fail. There's a chance that they lose part of themselves. Even if they succeed, they may lose part of themselves. And like you know how like you see presidents age rapidly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of priests just coming out looking much older than them when they walked into it, or
Yeah.
even heaven forbid if they lose faith during the exorcism, the demon
Mhm.
ends up inhabiting the priest.
Then he's super demon. And he's unstoppable.
He rides a motorcycle with an upside down cross.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So we're done there. I could jump into this next section.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, let's do it. So this is circumstances and accommodations for the whole ritual. The exorcist, mindful that the tribe of demons cannot be cast out except through prayer and fasting, should take care that these two most effective remedies for obtaining divine help be used. After the example of the Holy Fathers, both by himself and by others insofar as possible. The member of the faithful who is troubled should, especially before the exorcism, if it is possible for him or her, pray to God, practice mortification, profess the baptismal faith he or she has received, and frequently approach the sacrament of reconciliation, as well as fortifying himself or herself by the Holy Eucharist. Similarly, parents, friends, and a confessor or spiritual director may assist the person in prayer. If prayer is made easier for the person by the charity and presence of others of the faithful. The exorcism should take place, if possible, in an ordinary or in some other appropriate place, apart from a crowd, where the image of the crucified is prominent. There must also be an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary in the place. Keeping before his eyes the conditions and circumstances of the troubled person, the exorcist should freely use the various possibilities proposed in the rite. In the celebration, therefore, he should preserve the structure and arrange and select the formulas and prayers as needed, accommodating everything to the circumstances of the individual person. And this has like a little sublist. A. First of all, he should pay attention to the physical and psychological state of the troubled person, and to the possible variations in his or her state during the day or even during an hour. B. When there is no assembly of the faithful, not even a single one, which prudence and the wisdom that comes from faith otherwise require, The exorcist should be mindful that in himself and in the troubled member of the faithful, the church is already present, and he should recall this to the memory of the troubled person. C. He should always see to it that the troubled member of the faithful, while being exorcised, should, if possible, recollect himself or herself completely, turn to God, and with a firm faith beseech him for liberation with all humility. Even when the person is more violently troubled, let the person bear it patiently, in no way distrusting God's help through the ministry of the church. If it seems good to admit certain select individuals to be present for the celebration of the exorcism, they should be urged to pray earnestly for their troubled brother or sister, either privately or in the manner indicated in the rite. They abstain, however, from using any formula of exorcism, whether deprecative or imperative. These are to be pronounced only by the exorcist. And then lastly, it is desirable that the faithful person, after being freed from torment, should render thanks to God for the peace received, either alone or in company with close friends. Moreover, let the person be led to persevere in prayer, drawing it most especially from sacred scripture, and to frequent the sacraments of penance and of the Eucharist. Also to lead a Christian life filled with works of charity and fraternal love towards all.
And no
And so those are just
hanky-panky.
unless you're married, right?
Yeah. And then only on Saturday.
But I find it interesting how like precise it has to be.
Oh
And how
yeah.
even some of the prayers themselves cannot be recited by any members of the family or anything like that might be around, but it can only be done by the exorcist himself.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the conversations we've had about sort of magic happening in a vacuum. This concept that I think this is in ritual and rite almost across all cultures, where there's the priest who does the thing, everybody else shuts up and just sits there and either prays quietly or chants the way the priest instructs you to chant. And I think that it's because in order to access these, I don't know, subliminal spaces, you have to have a very orthodox approach, and only one person's sort of intention should be directing the energy. Because if you have everybody else trying to input their intention, the energy isn't focused, and then you're not successful in what you set out to do.
Yeah. I mean, that even works in, like non-religious things,
Yeah.
like
Just
the
workspace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like having everybody be a manager of themselves, and then it's like, all right, well, see how much work you get done.
Well, somebody has to do some sort of work, right?
Somebody has to give me a day off.
Well, looks like I got another 10 meetings today.
Yeah.
Well, today's going to be quite busy. No, I think you're right, and it's some of the imagery too. You have to have certain religious symbols on the walls, otherwise it's not going to work. The setting has to be just right, and even like I think last week we talked about with Kali the notion of if we should have shrines or God lives in the heart. I think this talks about too, like the church is in the heart. Just the idea of the church, not maybe the laws and stuff, but that God eventually lives in the heart, and that the only way to do it is to let that energy flow through you. Like the person also doesn't give thanks to the exorcist, right? They're not like, oh, thank you, Mr. Exorcist person, you saved me. You say thanks to God. So everything is just like flow. All energy flows to that single point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, well, and it makes sense too because so much of the characterization of exorcism is flying in the face of God. And so it makes sense that if you go through something like that and you're saved by God, that you then want to make sure you don't repeat those errors.
Better say thank you. Shoot.
Yeah.
No, but then, like, if this is some sort of just like ritual to help psychologically damaged people, I guess, then why all the dressing around it? Is it just from our religious brain override? Like, what's the point of all these rituals if demonic possession is not actually real?
It might be a placebo. I mean, people take authority very seriously. And we've had this conversation many times too, but I've brought up the concept of the nocebo effect, right? Where a doctor administers you a pill and says, this will make you vomit, but it's just a sugar pill. But you still vomit because you believe a doctor's authority telling you what is going to happen to you. And so your body creates those symptoms in order to affirm what the authority told you. So I can definitely see that, like, within the psychology of humans, we have this need to acquiesce to authority, or at least we are comfortable within the acquiescence of authority. And I think that that's why the person engaging in the exorcism, the unfortunate soul has to be a believer, because when you see that priest come in, then you believe that God is with you and that God is going to save you from this malady. And so having these, this pomp and circumstance and this ritual may not be so much about invoking God to slay a demon as so much that it is a psychological reframing of the person's mind.
Yeah, much like I've heard oftentimes, like therapy, right? If you don't believe in it, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah, so it's that same thing, but just with all the ancient dressings, all the chosen religious dressings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like the setting, I too guess helps a lot, right? To dress that scene up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why it says not being around a crowd too, right? You don't want that person focusing their attention on anything but the priest.
Yeah, and if they're going violent and going a little crazy, just the general safety of the crowd too might help.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, I think we're running out of time. We could dive into the 3 cases next time if you want, but I think that's a good overview of the overall ritual to leave it off on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was fun. That was really fun.
Spooky.
Yeah, I can bring up a case too. I was looking through this book that I have, and I found some demonic possession cases. So we can exchange notes and then bring up.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, bring up a second episode about exorcisms and stuff.
Maybe that might be one of our Halloween episodes.
Ooh, yeah.
We exchange demonic possession stories.
Yes, I'm down.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Halloween's coming up, right?
Oh man, we're gonna have to reprise the pumpkin episode.
Right, the Great Pumpkin episode. Yeah.
It's a good one. If you're listening, check out the pumpkin episode. We all were like, pumpkins, but it actually ended up being quite fascinating about the history of pumpkins and Halloween.
There's even some demons in there too.
There is, yeah. It's pinned on our YouTube page, so I think when you pull up our YouTube page, that's the first one that pops up, I think. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. This was a fantastic episode. Really appreciated the work that you put into getting all of this information out for us. I think that was really, really interesting. And thank you.
I'm honestly a little tired, and that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of brain drain, probably. Totally. But yeah, I mean, it paid off. It definitely shows. And this was a really fun episode. And thank you. And we hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Please feel free to give us some comments on what you think. Maybe some possession stories that you want us to bring up in our next possession episode, we'll definitely try to look into those. Any anomalies that you might want us to look into as well for future episodes, you can always let us know. But regardless, we appreciate you guys tuning in so much, and thank you so much for taking the time this evening or anytime you're listening to this. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. We're almost at 30 subscriptions on YouTube. Can you believe it?
What?
We're doing pretty darn good. Yeah. So we're almost there. I think we're at 28. So we need 2 more subs to get to 30, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, be our subs.
Well, I think you'll have to pay for that, but still.
Coming soon.
Just a little extra.
Right.
Oh, wait, no. Us or you?
Yeah.
No.
Silly. But yeah, thank you so much, you guys. We hope that you have a wonderful evening. Please be sure to check us out on the Thinkering Talks page on Facebook. We have a whole bunch of other podcasts that we do with our friends. We got our buddy Dijon, who I think is tuning in right now. If he is, shout out to Dijon. His podcast.
Mustard.
The Mustard. He's got a Twitch stream called Strawberries and Coffee. It's on a Tuesday and Thursdays at 10 p.m. Please be sure to go check him out. We also got Keelan from If Numbers Could Talk. He does his podcast on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. That's also on the Facebook Thinkering Talks page, but he has his own Facebook page and YouTube page, If Numbers Could Talk. So be sure to go check those guys out. We also have a Screen Time Continuum, which is our movies and TV show podcast that's on Wednesdays and Sundays at 8:30 p.m. But you can find all of those at the Facebook page Thinkering Talks. So please go check that out, and please let us know what you think. We very much appreciate all of the time that you take listening to us. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.